Hey there, if you're a beauty founder, wellness professional, or a healthcare provider building a brand, I made something special just for you. You already have the results, the credentials, the products, the testimonials, the loyal customers. You're credible. You've built something that works. But if your visibility and your revenue still don't reflect the excellence of your work, it's not your offer. The online landscape has changed. The attention economy is fading. And the brands growing fastest right now aren't chasing algorithms, they're owning authority. In my free masterclass, The Authority Era: How to Become an Influential Name in Beauty and Wellness and Attract More Customers, I will show you how to shift from attention to authority and how to use credibility as the engine that drives sustainable growth for the long term. Watch the Authority Era Masterclass free at factorpr.com/authority, and you can find the link in the show notes below. Welcome to the final episode of 2025 of Grow Your Wealth. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey, which started in January of this year. Today is episode 52. We did it, 52 episodes in, and it has been such an incredible ride. I have had the utmost pleasure of interviewing and sharing the stories of some absolutely incredible experts and entrepreneurs. You have access to all of those on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, and of course over at growyourwealthpodcast.com. And the feedback that we have received so far has just been extraordinary, and very excited to bring you guys even more juicy episodes, especially helpful episodes for you in 2026. That's exactly what we're going to deliver with this final episode of the year. If you're a founder, you're an expert, you're a service provider, and you are thinking here today that 2026 is the year that I finally get serious about my visibility and my authority, you got to listen and tune in to the episode in its entirety, because I'm giving you a sneak peek inside of my DIY PR Masterclass, which is part of the Realfluence platform. This is the only community built specifically to help beauty, health, and wellness brands grow through earned media, partnerships, and their own expert led influence. But even if you're not a beauty, health, or wellness brand, you will still get a lot out of this episode that can certainly be applied to just about any category that there is, because we're diving into exactly how to create your PR plan for the year. So, whether you're brand new to this or you want to sharpen your strategy, I'm going to actually be walking you through what matters, what's actually worth your very, very valuable time and energy, and how to make media coverage a consistent, aligned part of your marketing mix. And not only is the timing of this episode great, obviously being on the last day of the year, but also I wanted to fill you in that on January 8th, we are kicking off a 6-week visibility sprint inside Realfluence. This is a focused, supportive challenge to help you land your first or next of many pieces of press and start showing up as the credible, visible expert brand or product provider that you already are. This is the year not to just be seen. This is the year to be sought after. And with Realfluence, we're going to help you do that. So consider this episode your behind the scenes preview. And if you love what you hear, and I hope that you do, I would absolutely love to see you inside Realfluence. Let's make 2026 the year together that you stop being the best kept secret and start stepping into your spotlight area. Join me at therealfluence.com. Let's get into it. Welcome again to module 3. We're almost halfway through the DIY PR Project Masterclass series. Module 3 is all about developing a thoughtful PR plan. The difference between a dream and a goal, my friends, is a plan. And I know that this can seem like, oh, God, keep doing homework. But to be totally honest with you, in my 15-year career working in public relations, one of the things that really can sabotage a PR campaign is acting too late, to be totally honest with you. Deadlines are non-negotiables, and with a PR strategy and a plan that I'm going to walk you through today, we're going to really put pen to paper so that we never miss a deadline and make sure that we're positioning our brand not only in front of the right people, which we talked about in the last module, but at the right time as well too. So speaking of last module, what have we covered thus far in the DIY PR project? So module 1, we talked about owning our story to share our story. So getting down to the nitty-gritty of what is the story that we ultimately want to share with the media. In module 2, which was one of my favorites, really nailing down who our target audience is in terms of our customer, or if it were B2B business, in terms of the businesses that we're trying to reach in order to find the best media outlets to pitch our business. So that took us here to module 3. And today what we're going to talk about is why you need a PR plan, right? I kind of teed that up here just a moment ago, that this is so, so important not to skip. Again, the importance of timing. Timing is everything in PR. You can have a great story, a perfect pitch to the right person, but if it lands at the wrong time, right, then you've got to kind of start all over and revisit that pitch when it makes better sense. So we're going to be really proactive by building this PR plan so that our media outreach is happening at the right time. We're going to talk about what makes a good PR plan. There's no wrong or right way to make a PR plan, but I'm going to show you the way that we create PR plans at FACTEUR PR that not only satisfy our clients, but also help build an actionable roadmap to be able to get really good results for our clients as well too. And then last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about your assignment for this week. As you know, in the DIY PR Project Masterclass series, we will go through the video tutorial, and then following that tutorial, you will have an assignment where you'll put pen to paper and actually craft your PR plan. What's really cool about this PR plan, you can do it on a quarterly basis, you can do it every 6 months, you can do it annually, but the PR plan template that we give you can be reused and recycled as you need as well too. So very, very exciting stuff. For me, at least, I nerd out about this stuff, and maybe I can convince you too as well. So as we chatted about back in good old module 1, 70% of PR, particularly media relations, is in preparation, okay? When we sign on a client at FACTEUR PR, that first month that we work with a client, we're just preparing for the next 5 to 10 to 11 months ahead, okay? So this is really, really important right now, this preparation time. 20% of PR is typically going to be in execution, and 10% of PR is in response, okay? So we've got 90% effort, 10% of the time, we're going to be actually responding to the media, whether it be outbound pitches or inbound pitches. And truly, again, when it comes to PR, but honestly, we know this, right, as either business owners or executives, what have you, that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And we don't want to fail here, right? It is easy to go online and just shoot a message over to a journalist, but I want you to use your time and resources so well, right, that when we are making an ask from a journalist to cover us, that we make it a no-brainer for them, right? This is the difference between amateur PR and professional PR. And what we want out of this program is for you guys to walk away, coming away with the strategies to do PR professionally. So our goal is to really approach this entire process very strategically. So this is not a quick fix to a problem. As I've often said, the DIY PR project and what you're going to learn, this is not a shortcut. This is a smart cut, right? We're going to do this the right way. And when we continue these reps, it's going to become faster, but we cannot skip to the end until we put together this plan, right? So here are a few reasons why we need a PR plan. First and foremost, a PR plan will ultimately help guide us into how to serve our audience. So we're going to drill into sharing what's new with our audience, gaining valuable feedback from not just our audience, but from journalists as well too. And then create and continue a dialogue with these journalists as well. Because one thing you might come to realize, right, is maybe a particular pitch angle, a journalist, an outlet wasn't the right one after all. I'll tell you what, like, especially working with editors, just like all people, right? Sometimes they hop around, they switch jobs, they're no longer working in journalism. These are key things to keep note of in your PR plan, because again, if you're a particular type of business where maybe you sell a product, right? Other than launches, that product, your sales cycle might look very similar from year to year. So think about the holiday sales season, usually very hands-on deck, very successful time of year for most CPG brands. Well, what you learn in 2025's holiday season will serve you in 2026, and you just kind of learn and get smarter as time goes on as well. So we have to create that dialogue in order to get feedback and ultimately learn, only to make our PR plans and our PR strategies overall a lot more successful. Second reason why, right? We have to own that story in order to share our story. So this PR plan activity is our commitment to claiming that story and proactively sharing it. Number 3, this plan will help us turn these great ideas into action ultimately. This is so important and a big theme around here. We want to take the time to not only put together thoughtful strategies, but strategies that can actually be executed and we make them actionable here together. I don't want us to write things down on a piece of paper and tuck it away. We're going to turn our ideas into action and plug them into the PR plan. Now, the PR plan document that we have this week, you can either download the PDF file or the Canva file. I highly recommend Canva for many, many reasons. But the nice thing after we finish our public relations plan is that you can go ahead and plug in those dates and deadlines into something like a project management system that you use at your business. So at FACTEUR, we love and use Asana. You can use something like that, Monday, Trello, etc. So another way to really turn our ideas into action as well. Number 4, and very, very importantly, is a PR plan helps us stay on schedule. Life's. Business gets busy, right? And sometimes we forget our intentions, right? 3 months, 1 quarter can zip by quite quickly, as we know. But unfortunately, when it comes to the media world, those opportunities, once they're gone, they may not come back for another year, right? We just don't know. What will help us know is, again, those media kits that we collected in module 2 will identify some of those key deadlines at your target outlet. So hang on to those media kits. This is the time where you make the media kits actionable by inserting those publications, the editorial deadlines, and what to pitch ultimately in your PR plan, because sharing our story ideas ahead of when they need to be marketed is going to be key. We have to have enough runway in order to get the coverage. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this module, most brands that I see, that especially those that are DIYing their PR, where they start to fumble is when they don't stay accountable to these deadlines. Of course, here at FACTEUR PR, we're going to help you through that. But the biggest chunk of the work, first of all, is just to know when those deadlines are and make sure that those are documented. So we're going to document them in our PR plan. That makes a much more efficient use of our time, because what we want to do is do the heavy lifting now, that 70% of prep right now, so that we can take the time to plan and then execute and market later, right? Because I know especially as the years get going, it can be hard to stop and strategize. So we're going to do that together right now. 5th reason is the PR plan helps us ultimately allocate our resources appropriately. Whether that resource is money or time, or quite frankly, they're the same thing, right? Money is just an exchange of time. It's how we value time. So we need to make sure that we're allocating them appropriately. So if resources were endless, we wouldn't need a strategy, right? We would just willy-nilly do whatever we wanted. And it's okay because we have endless resources that just grow, right? But that's probably not going to be the case for most of us here. Planning helps use these resources wisely and helps us identify where there are holes to ask for more. It also helps just in terms of the rhythm of your business. I know some of the people that are in the DIY PR project, they are holding multiple roles at their business. So maybe they are you're a solopreneur, and not only are you in charge of PR for your business, but maybe you're also in charge of operations, hiring, all of these things as well too. When you know that there's a particularly busy season coming up, and like realistically speaking, maybe you're like, I don't think it's a good idea for me to distract myself with other things going on. I need to focus on my business. The PR can kind of come in waves. That's fine too, right? But it's just good to have those expectations lined up, because nothing worse, right? Where you are shooting for the sun, the moon, and the stars, and you don't even get to take off, right? Like, so we have to make sure that we're ultimately allocating our resources appropriately with a plan. And you might not be the entrepreneur yourself or the business owner. Maybe you work for the business owner. Well, let me tell you something. PR plan is going to make you look really good for your business owners, your stakeholders, your bosses, etc. And rather than throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to figure out how to put together a plan, we've got a template for you that you can use as well. And then last but not least, seventh and most important reason why a PR plan is so important is that it helps us meet our goals. What gets measured gets done. We are most likely to meet our goals when we have a plan to meet them, because it's all about working backwards from our goals. And you'll see at the very, very top of the PR plan template, we start with our goals, right? So that's why for just about any kind of business plan, you start with the goals, and then the plan itself shows you how to achieve those goals. We consider the big picture, in other words. And what that kind of looks like in terms of a workflow or a chart is starting with the mission, then the vision, your strategy, and your tactics. And this can be replicated for almost any kind of strategic plan, a marketing plan as well, a business plan, but important again to work backwards from our goal. So the mission is why we exist. The vision is, what do you want to ultimately be known or strive for? So think about the mission of your business, and it's bigger than your PR goals, right? Like, why are we here? Why do we ultimately exist? Our vision, in this case, vision for the business, vision for PR, drills down a little bit deeper. What do we ultimately want to strive for? And then the strategy is how we'll actually use our available resources in order to meet those goals outlined in the vision. And then tactics is how will the strategy actually be executed. I wanted to lay this out on a screen for everyone, because working with a lot of brands, these things get like mumbled jumbled. Sometimes people say vision when they mean mission. They say, I need a strategy, when they actually are looking for tactics, and vice versa. So it's important to understand, again, working backwards, what all four of these important components of any plan really mean, right? The mission is like our high up, high level. Again, why do we exist? Drilling down into our vision, what do we want to be known for or strive for? So it's like almost how we achieve our mission. Strategy is like how we achieve the vision, and then the tactics are how we achieve the strategy, right? So it's a cool way to kind of see that ladder up, but an important thing to distinguish, because again, sometimes I see they get interchanged, which is okay, but we're going to get really smart about this here pretty soon. So what our vision might ultimately look like, because again, that's going to help guide our plan. That's where our goals and objectives really live, is for a personal chef or a chef at a restaurant. That might look like something along the lines of to be the most trusted chef in the Midwest for all things vegetarian and gluten-free cooking. If you are in the wellness business, maybe it is to create a community of wellness enthusiasts from across the world that support one another as they reach and surpass their health goals. And if you're an entrepreneur, maybe it's something along the lines of to be the go-to resource for female entrepreneurs in growing their brands and businesses through actionable and inspirational storytelling. I love that. I could relate to that last one, of course, too. So again, that is ultimately what the vision looks like. So when you're talking about owning your story to share your story, give that a little bit of thought too. This is a good time to sort of check in with some of your hooks and headlines and think, is that really serving my vision? Chances are they would, but again, before we put pen to paper with the PR plan, always a good idea to just take that pause and make sure that what we're ultimately trying to secure in the media is fulfilling the vision of our company as well. Hi, friends. I want to tell you about our new and improved authority accelerator from FACTEUR PR called Realfluence. Realfluence is the only membership that helps beauty and wellness founders grow their reputation and authority to attract new customers without endless discounting, advertising, or going viral. Inside, you'll learn how to get recognized for your product or your expertise, partner with other founders, and become the name people trust and talk about, all with the guidance and community to support you every step of the way. Remember, you can't buy authority, you have to earn it, and Realfluence is here to help. Visit therealfluence.com to get started. So let's dive into the PR plan components. So in the plan, and you might have it up on your screen, you don't have to. You can always come back and rewatch this as well too. What we're going to start with is the summary of the plan before analyzing the situation that is the environment that the plan is being executed in. I'm going to talk about these in more detail here in just a moment. We're also going to share our target audiences in the plan, which if you completed module 2, you should have a really good sense of this already. You can just plug and play. We're going to also identify our goals and objectives in this PR plan. We're going to share strategies. So again, these are how we're going to use our resources to ultimately meet our goals before diving into the tactics. And the way that the PR plan template that I share with you goes into the tactics is on a monthly basis. So we'll talk about measurement here in a minute too. We like to measure things in media in quarters. So if you are putting pen to paper for this PR plan, keep in mind, do at least 3 months, at least. Better to do 6 months. 12 months is great, but you're going to have some tweaks, of course. I always consider PR plans to be living, breathing documents. What we said we're going to do in, March of last year may not have happened. Ultimately, a launch could have gotten postponed, funding could have dried up, whatever that might look like, right? But my recommendation, especially when it comes to measurement, in order to be able to measure accurately the trends that we're seeing and the results that we're seeing in media relations, at least 3-month increments. So 3 months or 6 months to start. And then last but not least, in your PR plan, I've also saved a slide for anything budget related, right? Everything that I'm showing you in the DIY PR project, you technically don't really have to spend a dime to be able to execute other than things that you already are using, like your phone or your email provider, things like that. You technically don't need anything else. But that being said, there are a few considerations you might want to make to help ultimately increase the chances of success of your campaign. But again, it's a consideration, it's not mandatory. So let's start with the summary. So the summary page is where we're going to introduce your brand. So dive into the details. Who are you? What is the vision of your company? How do you fulfill that mission through your mission or your offerings, right? So this is where we're really teeing up who we are and why we ultimately exist. Okay, so again, starting backwards, who are we? Why do we exist? Why is our brand important? The situation analysis, which I love, and you'll see part of the situation analysis in here, goes through something called a SWOT analysis. I love a good SWOT analysis. Take take your time with the SWOT analysis. Okay. Again, this is a great idea to, kind of research, ask your customers, your business partners, your team, what have you. We ultimately want to unpack the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats to our brand or to your mission. So, what is working really well? What's not working? What could we do better? This is important because, especially in PR, you have to be aware that, like, even if you pitch a home run story, there could be cracks in that story, right? So one example, this is actually a real life example from one of our clients at Factor PR. We had identified in the PR plan a weakness, which was their location. So what we try to do is ultimately frame that weakness as an opportunity, right? Like it's an opportunity to educate people more about the location, even just being very upfront about things like parking, right, can help offset having a not so savory location for a lot of people. So it's good to be able to sort of have this understanding and this awareness around what your strengths are, of course, and your opportunities, but any potential weaknesses and threats, because this is sort of laying the groundwork of, okay, every business has a weakness. Every business has a threat. How can we rise above it or own the narrative in a different way is ultimately what we want to achieve when we are unpacking this SWOT analysis. So kind of a fun thing. And if you notice you have a few extra weaknesses or threats, like don't despair, right? Most journalists, they're not going to pick on those things. I would say the ones that would are going to be your local media, but more than anything, it's just really, really important to have this overall awareness because it can, positively impact or potentially negatively impact your public relations efforts. But we're going to try to make sure that they only positively impact. All right, target audiences. So who are you marketing to currently or potentially? So this can include both camps of people. So you might have a primary audience and you might have a secondary audience, right? So you want to get into the nitty-gritty of not just demographics, but the psychographics of your audience, which again, you likely completed in Module 2's workbook. But again, if you need a little bit more insight, ask your audience, especially if you have a brick and mortar or maybe it's an e-commerce. If somebody is giving you information, this is the perfect time to ask some of those questions as well. One of the easiest questions that you can ask that is a little open-ended, so it lets the customer kind of tell you why they're there that day, is just what brought you here today? How did you find us, right? Like things like that, you can usually pick up on clues pretty easily about your target audience. Next are goals and objectives. Ooh, this is so, so important. If there's one thing to take away from goals and objectives, I want you to get as specific as possible when it comes to goals and objectives. What result do you want to yield from your efforts? So these can be tied to your overall business goals, right? You can want to generate awareness and attendance that looks like this. More memberships sold. That looks like this percentage increase. Maybe it's a list of certain media that you want your business to be featured in. Maybe it's an uptick in social media followers. Maybe it's just a bigger bottom line after a 6-month period. Make sure to jot as much as you can down. I don't want you to understand, like this isn't like 10 goals, right? This is really nailing down like 3 to 5 maximum goals as it pertains to your PR campaign. So jotting those down is super, super important because what we'll do on the next slide or the next section of the plan is ultimately answer the $1 million question of how are we going to achieve these goals and objectives this year based on the resources available to us. So resources, again, available to us, how much time we have, how much team do we have, how much bandwidth, all of those things. It also could come down to, maybe you have particular launches that you have to support, things of those nature. But typically what these strategies are, again, it's how we'll use our resources, but we are creating the strategies in this plan. So this could look like a campaign. It could look like an event. It could look like unveiling a new service, a new membership, right? This is where sort of like the marketing and the PR can sometimes intertwine. And if you do already have an existing marketing plan, your goals and objectives in your PR plan should ultimately help support what's in your marketing plan. So, for example, going back to something like revenue growth, we tend to know that PR alone doesn't necessarily grow revenue. What PR affords us is leverage or content, trust building, credibility that we can leverage in our marketing to help ultimately grow revenue. Okay. This is really, really important, right? It doesn't mean you can't have a revenue goal tied to PR, but just understanding that if you're going to tie a revenue goal to PR, you've got to include marketing in that effort, right? Because as we talked about in module 1, the primary objective in PR is to attract audiences and ultimately boost your reputation. Whereas the primary objective in marketing is to pursue audiences and ultimately increase revenue. Okay, so they work hand in hand really, really well. But just wanted to make that clarification as you're putting together your PR plan. And then finally, diving into the tactics. So as you'll see in the plan, what you want to do is share the specific ways you'll ultimately execute your strategy. So this will look like pitching to certain publications. This will look like meeting a deadline in an editorial kit. Going back to the last module, if you're that sunscreen brand and we know that June is the fragrance issue of Allure magazine, and we've got a scented sunscreen, and the close date, which is another way of identifying the deadline for putting that magazine to bed is at the end of March, then we want to try to pitch at least 6 to 8 weeks before that close date. Boom, you've got something to put in your PR plan that will look like, in this case, working backwards, middle of January, send pitch to Allure magazine for the June fragrance issue, right? So that is a specific tactic that we want to plug into the plan. That tactic has a deadline. It has a purpose in terms of when we are ultimately executing that tactic as well too, in order to really help us maximize our timing. Another tactic you might want to consider as well to sort of amplify your PR efforts are things like blog posts. Content marketing, SEO is always important for PR as well too. So in addition to publicizing things through what we call media pitching, outbound media relations, and so forth, to also help with things like discovery, you might want to include those like blog posts around, the time that you're pitching about summer fragrances on your website as well too, to really help with discovery. You also are encouraged to include things that aren't necessarily tied to a direct result, but things that are tied to the success of your PR plan in the PR plan. So things like video and photo shoots are hugely important to plug in. So if you're a product-based business and you know that you are going to have a launch in July, we need to pitch, anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks to 3 months before that. You're going to want to do your photo shoot in the late winter to give you time to have all of those images to plug into your press kit, which we'll talk about next week, and have those available to the media. So you see, there's a lot going on in this public relations ecosystem, but ultimately this will help us not just wrap our head around all of those things, but to, again, use our time strategically in order to maximize our results. This is another look too, as far as that media relations timing that I talked about, just to give you an idea of, again, why we want to work at least 3 to 6 months on our PR plan. So there are 3 types of media ultimately that we tend to pitch. So something called long lead media. That means we need 3 to 6 months of lead time before that media is on a shelf or in the podcast store, things along those lines, it will take 3 to 6 months to produce. So that's, again, like national glossy magazines, podcasts, some TV programs. You're going to need more runway for those. Again, those media kits will go into that, and you'll see, right? Like June issues put to bed in March. That is very, very common for a lot of these national glossy magazines. So again, we want to work backwards from that if your goal is to get into one of those publications. Short lead, which includes things like digital news, some other podcasts, and blogs, TV features, those are going to be 1 to 2 months. Okay, so you're going to want to pitch 1 to 2 months out from that time. So just depending, some outlets will want to have less time. Some will want to have more time, right? I always err on the side of giving it more time, because the time that you pitch, let's say, you're trying to get into a story for, I don't know, something for Memorial Day, and you decided to pitch 2 months out. Well, maybe you didn't hear back from the writer, but what you can do now is follow up with them. Okay. So that's a good idea to be able to do. When in doubt, just give yourself, which ultimately gives the writer a little bit of extra time, because you can always follow up. And then the last type are what we call kind of like the dailies. Not that there are too many daily newspapers still floating around, but daily newspapers, radio, TV news. Typically, those are much faster lead times. They're more interested in things like breaking news. The majority of what we pitch at FACTEUR PR are short leads, quite honestly, because most digital publications typically work weeks to a couple months out. Long leads are probably what everybody wants. They're the juiciest, they're the frame-worthy types of publications. But again, because they are typically going to be printed, there's just physically less space in the magazine. So it's harder to get in, right? So you might have to consistently and continuously pitch to try to get into one of those publications. But of course, the result is absolutely worth it as well. Whew, I know this is a lot of information. Stick with me. We're almost done. So measurement. Like I said, what gets measured gets done. And so we also want to drill into the guidelines for evaluating our efforts. This can look like, measuring an increase in sales. It can be awareness and engagement. So on social media or things like that. It can be leads, email lists, media hits, social media shares. In the Canva doc, we've got a whole list of different KPIs. All of them might not be applicable to your business, but we've shared with you about 13 in there that we typically see businesses like to use. And you may have other ones as well, just depending on your business. But want to make sure that those are included as a guideline for ultimately how we're going to evaluate if our efforts are working or not. And like I mentioned, you're going to want to really analyze trends on a quarterly basis. You can absolutely measure KPIs more frequently than that, weekly, monthly. But in order to really establish and analyze a trend, we recommend quarterly, because as we noted in this slide here, sometimes it takes 3 months for a piece of media coverage to be published, right? So don't get discouraged. This is just the reality of media relations, which is why it's so important, right? As we said in the mindset video as part of this program, you can look at this as one day or day one. The fact that you are starting means that you're that much closer to not just seeking out coverage, securing it, but ultimately that coverage coming to light and sharing it with your audiences too. As I mentioned as well, we also have a bonus slide for budget considerations. These might be things that you need to think about either in the short term or in the long term about what money, if any, might I need to invest into a particular campaign, into a particular result, whether it's for you or for your team. This is always really, really helpful to be able to include ultimately in your PR plan, because you just kind of want to have that out in the open. There's no sense in having a dynamite PR plan if you can't achieve what's in the PR plan, because you're missing something really important like photography or subscriptions to particular news outlets in order to be able to really determine who the best person is to pitch, and equipment, things along those lines. As part of the DIY PR project, you also have a fantastic free resource available to you called the DIY PR Resource Guide. And in that guide, we also have a list of some of our recommended resources to, again, help you work smarter, not harder throughout this program and even beyond too. So take a look at that. There are some free resources in there. There's a few that are paid too, but just want to make sure that you have everything available to you. And we've sort of digested all of that and shared it with you in the DIY PR resource guide. And that's it. This is how we ultimately strategize our PR efforts going forward. You have access to this template in the DIY PR module 3. So as soon as that is unlocked, or you might be watching this and it's unlocked for you already, feel free to get access right away to that plan. Again, every Friday, we've got weekly live Q&A sessions. We can take a look at the draft of your plan. You can ask any questions, or you can tag us in the community, and we're happy to take a look at it as well in there too, if you just kind of want some on-the-fly feedback or would like us to weigh in on strategies, tactics. I think it's a great opportunity, like, hey, I've got this launch coming up. I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z for this result. What do you guys think? Do you have other ideas? Things along those lines can be really, really helpful as well too. But just to reiterate, the PR plan template is a Canva file that makes it really, really easy to update, to save, make copies of, whether it's for, this year, this quarter, etc. And then we also have a PDF version as well, if it's something you'd like to prefer to print out, kind of scribble down your ideas, take it to a meeting, share with the team, and then put it into the PDF or Canva file as well too. But make the document your own. So you'll see all of the sections that we talked about in the PR plan are listed page by page with a short prompt, just to kind of remind you, so you don't necessarily have to keep toggling back and forth between the video and the template, so that you can go in and page by page, again, like, oh yeah, this is a strategy. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what a tactic should look like. Things like that as well. But again, specific ideas for your business, I recommend, like we've talked about, look at competitors for ideas, ask the community for ideas. Social media is a great place for ideas. But try not to get distracted. There's a big difference between inspiration and distraction. So I wouldn't even start to draft any ideas. I wouldn't draft any strategies and tactics until you have your summary, your situation analysis, and your goals and objectives done, because everything else is white noise, right? We don't want to use this document and ultimately get shiny object syndrome. Like, we should do this, we should do that. Doesn't meet our goals. Will this help us meet our goals? That should be your North Star, right? So don't confuse inspiration with distraction. It's great to be inspired by other campaigns, other businesses, but we have to make it work for our business and ultimately for our business goals. So you guys got this. We're here for you. If you have any questions along the way, any issues, any ideas, please don't hesitate to let us know. And congratulations for completing Module 3 of the DIY PR project. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you joining. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode deposited some useful advice and insights to help you grow your wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations. You can find more resources, episode details, and updates at growyourwealthpodcast.com. And let's keep the conversation going on Instagram. Follow me at Grow Your Wealth Podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or takeaway from today's show. Until next time, remember, burnout is optional. Take care, and I'll see you next week.